what I would like to show here is how I do some of my digital workflow. And I'm fairly new at this, so maybe you'll have some tips for me that would help me speed things along as well. But this is what I've done this year now that I've gone all digital. I'll take all my work from the day, or from the session I should say, on a compact flash card. I'll pop it into a reader and I will copy it to a hard drive in the computer at the studio and to an external hard drive, so I have a duplicate, I have a backup right away. And I will then clear it from the compact flash card and continue shooting sessions, and I will do this after each session. At the end of the day, I will have all my work stored in a directory with that day's date. The directory will be called, for example, 9/10/04, and I'll have one on the studio computer and on the portable hard drive. And I'll bring the portable hard drive home and plug it in through the USB 2 port to the home computer and copy the day's directory over to the home computer as well. So I have it in 3 places. If the portable hard drive goes down, I've got it still in 2 places. So I never really have to burn CDs or DVDs or spend time, making backup discs. The hard drives are so much faster than burning CDs and DVDs that to me that just is the smartest thing to do. I may use backup DVDs at the end of the year, but even then it's quite time consuming and takes a lot of discs. I think I would rather take a portable hard drive or pop a hard drive out of the computer and put it on the shelf with that year's work on it. I can fit my entire year's work on, say, a 250 gig drive, and today I looked in the paper, they're less than $150, so that's not too bad for backup for each year. And then what I'll do is I will bring up Photoshop here, and normally I do this in a much larger form because I run a higher res desktop than what I'm recording here, but for the sake of keeping the video as short as possible, I've shrunk down the size of Photoshop's window, and I imagine that some of the students out there are running lower res desktops, and I want to try and fit this on your complete screen. And what I now do, instead of using Breeze Browser, which I used to use from Breeze Sys, since the Mark II came out, Breeze Browser didn't support the Mark II, so I was forced to do alternate things, which forced me to use Photoshop and learn more of its features. And now that I've done that, I don't really find I need Breeze Browser anymore. What I do is I use the browser in Photoshop by clicking this little icon right here. I'm using Photoshop CS, which is the latest version. And excuse me just a second, since I have scaled this down, my window is bigger, so let's bring that down and then reshrink it. Okay, this is a day's, these are the day's sessions here, and over here are my directories. And what I have is, let's see here, it's a little sluggish because I'm running so many things at once, but there's each day that I would shoot, like 6/22/04, 6/23, 6/24, and all the way down to this one here, which is 7/22. And these are all my raw files in here. Eventually I will have a JPEG directory in each one as well, because my proofs are JPEGs. So I click the one I want, which is the one we're in here, and this is the day's shoot here. This is the first senior, and the next young lady, and the next young man, and another guy there, just kind of a small sitting, and then of course this young lady, which you've recognized from the ballet photos. And what I'll do, pretend I'm at the first shot here. There was a few shots of her above, but pretend I'm at the very first shot in her session. And I threw these off in color. Actually, when I shoot them, they're closer to perfect than what I'm showing here, but I wanted to throw them off a little bit to show you the effect of what I'm doing. What I'll do is I'll bring up the first one in the browser by double-clicking on it, and we have a big problem again that it is too big. Let me see if I can scale it down here. Normally I use it real large. It's about as small as it's getting, so let's apparently, will it go smaller? No, it won't let me go smaller. We'll try and fit it in here. What I'll do is I'll adjust the color for this particular image. This is the size here. It's down to only 27%. If you want to go to 100% you can, but you're not going to be able to see much. So you can do a smaller percentage or just say fit in window. Now you'll see the entire image. And what I'll do is I'll come over here to temperature. And this was the temperature that your white balance is set at. And if you go left, it'll go blue or cooler. And if you go right, it'll go yellow or warmer. And what I'll usually do is start there and drag it to about where I feel she looks best. I don't like my skin tones too warm. I'm a little odd that way. I like them a little cooler. But I'll put it about where it feels right. Then there's the tint option, and one way goes green and the other way goes magenta. So you can use this to take out the green cast, especially important when you're outdoors and you're picking up green in to the skin and hair from reflectance from the grass and bushes and things like that. I'm going to pull the green out until my highlights look fairly white. And then you can adjust your exposure. Your exposure histogram is up here, and it should pretty much run from the left side to the right side. And you can see that it's slightly underexposed, which is where I like to be. And by increasing the exposure, you'll see the histogram area over here on the right start to move right until about right there is about perfect. And you'll see that it's just coming to the edge of the line. Now if I overdo that, you'll start to see that I get these peaks up here. That means that you've gone too far and you're blowing out, and it's blowing out the highlights here. So when you get one that you shoot overexposed and it comes in this way and you see that this is blown out up here, just reduce your exposure a little bit. This way you don't have to be so finicky about exposure and color while you're shooting all day long. And you can fine-tune it here because you shot raw. Now another neat feature is you can pump up the saturation just a touch if you'd like. You can increase contrast if you feel the need, but again, watch out for those highlights. You'll see as in the normal contrast here, which is about 25, that I'm not peaking out here and I'm not blowing out highlights. As I increase the contrast, watch the highlights up there in the histogram. You'll see that I'm now blowing the whites out here because I've increased the contrast so much. I like a lot of tonal range, so it's quite normal for me to turn the contrast down just a little bit lower than normal. And then one of the neatest features here, since I used to shoot with a vignette on the camera, I no longer do that. I click lens, I bring the vignetting amount to maximum, and you'll see the difference there, the vignette applied over on the image. See how the outer edges get darker? And then the midpoint, what this one does is bring in a vignette amount out here. The midpoint here starts to bring it in. It makes it a little more of a gradiated effect here, more gradual, and starts bringing it in. And it is not uncommon for me to bring them both all the way to the left like that. And sometimes it seems like too much here, but when I get the proofs back, it looks just right. Also, keep in mind that these are not cropped yet. This will be a 4x5 crop when presented to the customer in proof form, so it will be cropped right along the top about here, and it'll be cropped along the bottom about here. So everything from here down will not be seen by the customer. So we're actually just seeing the vignette effect in here. So that is how I vignette. Now I go back out and I feel that I have my perfect image there. I can now hold down the Alt key on the PC, which changes this. If I click OK, it will bring up the image and it will load it in into Photoshop to be edited. I don't want to do that. I want to apply these new settings to the image. So I am going to hold Alt, and you'll watch the OK change up here. Pushing Alt now, and I will click Update. And what that does is it applies my new settings to this image, and you just saw it change if you didn't rewind back and take a look again. And you can see how this one compares to how they were originally shot here. Now the neat part is I can go over, keeping this one selected, the first image selected, by holding Shift down and clicking the farthest image that I want, the last image. I can go to this one as well, click that. I can now right click on any one of these selected images and select Apply Camera Raw Settings and hit Enter. When I hit Enter, a little window pops up, which popped up on my other screen. I'll drag it over here. because I run two screens. It says apply first selected image. That would be this one here. So it's going to apply all the settings from the first selected image to all these other images I have selected. And I can click update, or I can just hit enter, and I usually just hit enter for speed because I do this quite quickly at the end of each day. Now all of the settings will be applied. You'll see it's taking effect here. Watch, this one will change. I'm not doing anything at this point. The software is doing it on its own, and sometimes it takes quite a while, especially if I scroll down and start applying settings to the next images, and it'll take a while to catch up. So those are all applied. Now if I bring this up and I double click on the last image here, you'll see that my temperature and tint and exposure and all my settings here are the way they were set for the first image. Since those were all taken the same, with the same lighting, pretty much the same background, everything fairly consistent, they should all look quite nice with those same settings. When I go into Lens, you'll see that my vignetting options are still applied to this setting the way I applied them to the first image as well. And what I can now do is select more of these. Since these were all head and shoulders, all the same lighting, I can say apply settings, and I can click OK, which is hitting return, and it will apply these settings now to these images as well. Now what I'll usually do is pick a different image like this for each background change, each lighting change, and I will go in and adjust the settings here as well. I'll set the vignette, and I'll adjust the temperature and the exposure. And if you shoot real consistent, you can do just the first image of the session and go right to the end and do the last image of the session. And I mean, more power to you if you can pull that off. I get quite a bit of fluctuations in my color and in my exposure primarily. So what I'll do is bring up each different set in a series like these 5, and I will adjust the exposure mainly to get the histogram right here on the edge. And sometimes you'll want to push it past that, not for this image. Maybe if you're outdoors, or if someone has white on or black on, they'll throw off the histogram. But typically you'll want it all the way here to the end. Now the blacks are kind of mudded up over here. What you can do with shadows is lighten those just a touch. Go from 5 to 4 or 3, and you'll see that those shadows start to adjust as well. But I usually don't play with those too much unless I've shot something maybe a little bit too harsh and I want to reduce some contrast. I'll go from 5 to 4, but I usually leave that set at 5, which is the norm. And then once I get the color set here where I like it, I'll hit Alt and click Update. It will update that image, and I will pick any others that are similar to it. I can come all the way down from that image to this one, which are all the same. And I'll do an apply for selected image, update again, and it will apply those settings now to all these images. This one here that you see, which is a little problem, is a misfire from one of the pocket wizards on the main light. Did not trip. I usually get 1 to 2 of those a day, so, and I might as well just delete that. So you can edit as well. If you see eyes closed, something that you absolutely don't want, you might as well right click on it, click delete, and get rid of it. I usually don't do that yet unless I know it's something absolutely unsavable, eyes closed or something like that. If it's just a shot I think I may not like, I'll keep it around and edit it out later in the proofing stage. So you can go through and do this for all of the shots. Indoors, there usually isn't as much adjustment. Like I said, sometimes it's just exposure a little bit, not so much color. Outdoors, there's a lot more color fluctuations, but what I will do on all the indoors is come in and apply the vignette to every image. And then again, this is a certain set of series with this background. They're all lit the same. The main light and hair light were not moved for any of these, so I will include all of those. Also, I just came in closer on these next shots down here. Lighting and color did not change, so I'll include those. Right click, apply camera raw settings, which are the settings that I had on my first selected image, and click update or hit enter. In my case, I do that because it's faster. then I'll pick this one because this is a different background. The colors of the background may reflect into the subject, and I may want to take out some of that green. Also, because it's full length, maybe the main light might be just a touch further away than the string distance to keep it out of the frame. Generally, I'll keep it a string's distance, but maybe it was in the shot and I pulled it out just a touch. I will pull up my exposure here, and this is a good example of, you'll see a flat line here and she's almost blown out. If I start bringing this over, you'll see she's really blown out as I just start to touch the far end. So this is one of those rare instances where I go more visually how it looks here rather than using the histogram. And it's just because there isn't a lot of light or any white in the image. There's a little bit up here from the hair light, which is this flat little bar here. So what I will do then is just hit Alt, Update, adjust that image, and again I'll fix that whole series in front of that background. I will do a right click, apply camera settings, and the other window pops up, and I'll hit enter and it will apply those. I'll do the same thing here to this particular one. I'll adjust here. Let's do it for an example. Now some of these have already been applied, like this already has the vignette, so I've already been here. You can come in and make it just a little warmer. I keep this one usually cooler than normal because I don't like the background here to go warm. I like it a little cooler and the bricks real clean. I may pump up the saturation a little, the vignette of course, and I don't vignette usually the glass blocks as much because I don't like to see black edge here with the light glass blocks. I'll update that, and I will include all the ones that go with that series, which are these. And actually, if you look and you see that the exposure of the face is fairly similar, even though this is a slightly different setup, you'll see that I came in closer here. Especially if I'm in a rush at the end of the day, I'll include those too. And then I might, if I feel I pushed it, I may come back and look at one by just clicking on it, and you'll see the effect was just planted in there, was just applied, and I'll think, yes, that is okay. Come down, and I would do the same here. I would adjust that. And I will do this with all the images that look the same. Another neat thing is if one of your clients got a black and white session, you can come in here and say, okay, this outfit was black and white, for example. You can bring it in by double clicking on it. You can make it black and white, increase the contrast, which I usually like to do for black and white. You can hit Alt, which makes it go to update. Click update, and you'll see that it will be applied. And now say these 6 shots here were the black and white session, and I'm going to right click and say apply settings. I'm going to hit enter, and within a very short amount of time you'll see the black and white applied. The nice thing about this is if a client looks at the image and says, boy, I love this black and white image, but I really wish it were in color. Because you shot these raw, you can go back into it and say, okay, anything that we shot in color can be black and white, and anything in black and white can be made color, and you can restore the color back again. Holding Alt, I'll click update. It will apply that, and if I want to restore it to all of them, I just click this, apply settings, pops up this window, and I'll hit enter, and the color will be restored again. Now, the most important part of adjusting color for each part of the session here is the outdoors, because I don't change white balance. I shoot the same that I use indoors, and outdoors, from every location, pretty much every pose, everything is different. So again, I'll pick that first shot. I will warm it up, which is usually the biggest problem. It will usually have a lot of blue in it from the sky, also a lot of green in it sometimes from all the grass. I'll pull a little green out by sliding this to the right. And we know, we've learned when we correct color, we have cyan and red, magenta and green, yellow and blue. And what we've got here is our yellow and blue, just like we do when we're correcting color in the lab. We have our magenta and green, just like we do in the lab. But you sit and think, where is our cyan and red? Well, if you add both of these in equal amounts, you're adding red. And if you'll see how red she is. And if we remove these in equal amounts, we will add cyan. So really we have control over all three sliders that we would normally have when adjusting the color in a lab. But it makes it a little easier because you only have to look at a couple at a time. So it's a little green, you pull it out until she's not green. She's still a little yellow, maybe pull that out. And again, you can adjust the exposure where you want. Now here she's getting blown out, and I'm watching the histogram and watching her face. I'll usually go more from visual clues, but I'll use that histogram as well. If you want to add contrast, you can, or decrease contrast. And of course the vignette, you can bring that in. Hit Alt, click Update, and it will now update this image. And then I will pick all the rest of the images at that particular place and say Apply. And these are actually different poses and in a slightly different spot. So I'll click on one of those, watch the adjustment get applied, and make sure that it's satisfactory. Sometimes I'll have to go back in and redo those because they are different. Now this is a spot I don't shoot at very often. She looks quite underexposed there. So we'll take this over and push it, and she's also quite blue. There's nothing here but open sky. It's not the greatest spot because it does have light from overhead, which I frown upon. But I wanted these flowers behind her, so I played with the spot. I can warm it up by adding the yellow. I can pull out some green by adding a little magenta. I can add the vignette, try and get rid of some of this background area. Hit Alt, Update, and I will pick just those two images and tell it to apply. Now I can apply to these other images, but I may not get what I want there. So what I'll do is I'll try it just for the sake of the video. We'll come out of it and we'll click one of them, watch it being applied, and it's not too bad. It's better than what it was, but I would rather go in here and adjust temperature and exposure for this particular spot. Now her pants are quite light and her face is aiming down away from the light, and I really want to adjust the exposure for her face. So this is one of those instances where the histogram may show that we're blowing out the pants a little bit, but I'll do that. See, I'm getting a spike here. The pants are starting to get blown out, but I'm doing that because the face is the important part to me. Remember, these will be cropped and some of the pants will be removed, and then the vignette will help burn down the pants as well. So let's do that now. Well, it is already, but you'll watch that if I don't have that vignetted, that they're really getting blown out, and her face isn't too bad. Let's bring it down a little bit, adjust the face here again on the wrong one. There we go. So that's where I like the face. The pants are a bit blown out. I'll go into the vignette, watch the pants. They'll just burn up nicely. Now her face is a little dark yet, so I might push it just a little more. A little less contrast too will lighten things up. And I'll say Update, and you'll watch it get applied. And now I will pick all the rest of those and say Apply. And now you'll see this one will get adjusted here. Oh, it did that one first. It may come up and do, oh, it's still working up there. It's working on all these other ones that I've applied. The only way to see it right away is to come off from it, click the one you want to see applied, and it will do that one first. This is the one we had adjusted, and it just readjusted it, and that does look better. I'll come down here. I could apply from this, Apply Settings, and it may be right on, but see, in this case it's not. I had more light here, so she's getting overexposed. So while you can try that, see if it works, and then go back in and adjust it. Now the histogram's perfect. She looks great. I'm going to update, which will adjust her. I will now select all of these, apply, and I'll very quickly go through and do this at the end of each day, and it takes half an hour, 45 minutes, depending on how many sessions and how many shots I did that particular day. Now again, the histogram is maxed out here. It's because of her light pants. Her face still appears too dark to me, so I will push it just a little bit, and you'll see that I'm now blowing out the blues here in the pants, and the whites are real close to it. I will click Lens, add that vignette, Sometimes it's a little much, so I'll back off a tad, adjust the exposure again, decrease contrast, try to keep her pants from blowing out and lightening her face, and update. And you'll see the update take place. I'll come down to all of them in the swing. All of these were the same light, the same color, because they were taken in the same place. When we come down here I'm at the Villa set, and I'll double click that. I like this a little warmer, and a lot of times I'll judge color by the props. I know that this is a yellowy color, and as I look at this yellow I'm seeing some green in it, so I'll pull some green out by adding a little magenta. Now her hair looks a little magenta in skin, so I'll back it off a hair. I'll push the exposure. This particular spot had a lot of light from above, so it's not the best. She's getting some darkness under her eyes here. She should be under the awning a bit more. I wasn't nuts about that particular shot. This was a very overcast day. So I did 2 or 3 here. Saw that I wasn't really nuts about the light and pushed her underneath more with the wall. Again, adjust that one, adjust the exposure, cut the contrast if you want, pump up the saturation a little bit. Now she's a little red, and how do we remove the red? We want to decrease both of these in equal portions. The red is gone. The vignette is there. Update. And we're going to take both of those, apply, and we would do this one individually as well. She almost looks a little cyan there. So we're going to add red by adding equal portions of both. Make sure the vignette is there. It's already been applied because I've been through these already when I proofed them for her. And that's applied, and I will come down and see, okay, all of these, apply, enter, same thing here. You can see the reflector down here, but remember that will be cropped right about here and cropped right about here to make a 4x5. Now I see a lot of blue in her pants, or cyan, so let's pull the blue out by going warmer. In case it's cyan, we'll take a little of that out, looking much better. Decrease the contrast a touch, increase the exposure a hair to lighten her face, and you'll see in the histogram again, we are blowing out a bit in the whites, but the vignette will help fade those whites down a little bit. We'll burn them down. I'm applying my settings, and I will pick all of those, click apply, and hit enter, and this can be done really quite quickly. The beach is always a little different color here. I'll come in and adjust the exposure again. The white pants cause a little bit of problem. A little bit of warmth. Update. And I'll pick all the shots on the beach. Can go to there, and there may even be more down below here. Nope, that's it for the beach. So I will right click on one, apply settings. I hit enter, and it will now lighten up each of these, and it will do them in kind of a random order. I just did these 2, still working on those 2 from my last settings. These 2 just applied, and these will be coming up here real soon. And I'm just sitting here doing nothing, it's applying them. And then these are just some we played around with the sign, which I didn't care for either, but she goes to West Catholic, which is a school I work with, and there's a West Street sign, which she thought was cute. So then, once that's done, we don't even have to wait for them to be, for the settings to be applied yet. We've told it to be applied, so they are, whether they actually are or not. Like that one wasn't. So I just don't worry about it. And what I'll do here is go up to File, Scripts, and I've installed Dr. Brown's image processor, which I've talked about on Portranet. You can download it from Portranet. It's a great little utility. And I will call that up, and I will say browse, and I will browse to the folder that I'm working on. And I don't remember, this was the 22nd, 7/22, but I'll go to the last date, and that's why this came up, because this is some of Colby's here that we had just shot. And I will pick the date, but let's go back and do her Hers are 72204. So we'll go up 722, go into the RAWs 04. This JPEG directory will not exist yet. It will be created by Dr. Brown's. We will click OK, and the path is now up here. This is the path that this young lady, the ballet dancer, is in, the senior. And then I'll say destination, and I will pick that same directory, which was 722. I'll go up to 722, and I will pick the root directory. This is because Dr. Brown's will create a JPEG directory inside the directory that you choose. You can click it here and it will put the JPEG directory in there, but I like them separate, so I click the root and it will create this directory, and in that directory it will create all of the small JPEG versions of the raw files automatically, which I will upload to the lab. So I've clicked the root. You can even say make new folder and click JPEG, but it will then create a JPEG folder in the JPEG folder, so that's not necessary. As few steps as possible. So we click OK, and we have our source and our destination. I'm going to say you can turn them all to TIFFs if you like, but I turn them all to JPEGs. And quality of I just did 9 because it was Colby's proofs. I wanted to make sure they were really good, but normally I'll run 8, and that's just the amount of compression. You can run different tests with your lab, see what they look like. I'm sure I could probably go down to 7 or possibly even 6 and maybe not see any difference in quality. The nice thing there is when you're uploading 150, 200, 250 proofs at the end of the day, the difference between 7 and 9 may be an extra 20 minutes or half an hour of upload time. So you want them to be as small as possible, so compressing by lowering the quality, making them smaller, but keeping the quality good enough so that you're content with the quality of your proofs. Then I can set my size. It says resize JPEG. And what I do there is I figure I'm shooting 4x5s, so I figure about 300 pixels per inch. Actually, my lab says 250, and for all my finished orders, my 8x10s, 4x5s, etc., I actually make them 250 ppi. But for proofs, I run 300 just because I want those proofs to be excellent. They're fairly small, so it keeps it simple for me. And what I base this on is a 4x6 because I haven't cropped them yet. And what I have set here is my width and height maximum. And what this does is it sets it my longest distance, whether I have a horizontal shot or a vertical shot, will be 6 inches because they're not cropped to 4x5 yet. As far as the lab knows, they're seeing them as I'm sending them 4x6s. So 6 inches times 300 ppi, 6 times 3 is 1800. So I set the longest dimension, which will be 6 inches in a vertical or 6 inches on a horizontal, to 1800. So I have 1800 pixels by 1800 pixels. You could also do this at 250 ppi. 250 ppi times 6 would be 1500. You could set this at 250 pixels, and I've done it, it works fine. Would be 6 inches times 250 would be 1500 pixels, and that would make your smallest possible proof size for a 4x6. Now I don't show customers 4x6, I show them 4x5s. So what I do is after I upload them in 4x6, I order 4x5s at the lab, and when their machine prints a 4x5 from a 4x6 file, it will crop equally a half an inch off the top and bottom. It's already 4 inches wide, so there's no change there. It just needs to eliminate 1 inch from the 4x6. So because I have my crop guides about here and here in the camera, when I compose a 4x5 or an 8x10, I have them positioned perfectly. Now I upload 4x6s and the lab will print a 4x5. Their machine will automatically crop the top half inch and the bottom half inch, and my proof will be exactly what I see in my viewfinder. So to get back to Dr. Brown's image processor, you can have this at 1500 by 1500 if you like. I don't mind the little extra time or the little extra size, so I just go for that extra 300 ppi, and I also do that because my logo will be in the corner. I just want to make sure everything is nice and clear and smooth. Copyright info, I'm not real sure what this does. I put my name in there. I think it may apply it to the file, and I'm not real worried about what it does, but it's there. Then I click Run, and I can walk away, and I'll usually do this right when I get home, and by the time I've gone through all my applying settings, what I do then is I go up and have dinner, and when dinner's done, the proofs are ready to upload.